Welcome. I have the honor to present today with Tawny and Jenny. My hope is that you were able to join us previously for the other sessions and gain some background information that we had provided in our other presentations. My name is Maria Vetter. I'm an education consultant and advocate who works at a private law firm in Pennsylvania. We do advocacy and legal representation for families, and we provide that direct service. We also do a lot of educating and providing parent resources and information. So if at any point any families feel that they would like some more information, they can feel free to reach out to us anytime, or my co-presenters, as we have all provided our information. So thank you for joining today. The topic is really going to focus around family rights, which we've spoke about a little bit before and give you some information on. And then really the bulk of it will be advocacy and how can you be a good advocate for your child. My belief is a well-educated parent is always a good advocate for their child. So a lot of this is just about empowering you to become an advocate. We'll have a brief presentation, some discussion with my co-presenters at the end, and then discussion with families after. The PowerPoint will be available. I did make the slides detailed so that parents, you can keep this as a resource, hopefully, to refer back to as needed. So Tawny and Jenny both spoke expertly about what your child is entitled to under IDEA, under Section 504, under the ADA. This is just a brief reminder about what we call FAPE, and that's what your child is entitled to, which stands for free, no cost to parents, appropriate, as you can see, meeting individual child's needs. They have to make progress. And education does not just mean academics, as many people believe it does. Education refers to social and emotional development for your child as well. And then public education, so special education and related services. And if your child cannot be provided for within the public school system, that there are other placements on the continuum that are a possibility that could be paid for by the public school system. VIP. So I do talk to parents a lot about remembering that they are the expert on their child. You are the one who sees your child more than anyone else, and you are the one that has the most information about your child. So therefore, you are the most important member of the team. And I wrote, it certainly doesn't always feel that way. So what can you do? And advocacy for me really centers around these pieces. It's very student focused. As the I in IEP stands for individualized, I really try to make sure parents understand that their child's IEP should be distinct to their child. It should be addressing all of the needs. So every conversation and every meeting should be very student focused. It should also be proactive. Districts and intermediate units and private school placements tend to be reactive by nature. They wait until a need presents itself to do something. I like to think parents can support their children by being proactive, anticipating that a need is arising, or anticipating that your child is going to need support in a certain way, or looking towards the future in terms of programming. What will my child need in the future? How can I now get those answers, educate myself? I also believe it's collaborative whenever possible. I do tell parents at the end of the day, you're leaving your child with your team, and you want to build a relationship of trust and feel that you can discuss things openly and have really good communication. So the next is it's collaborative and open-minded and creative. You want to problem solve things, and you want to always keep an open mind. It's just as important to know what you want and as it is to know what you don't want, and don't predetermine things. You never know. They may offer you a suggestion to visit a program that you feel is not appropriate, go visit, take a look. It's good to do that. And then you can make the well-informed and educated decisions. It's based on a thorough understanding of the student's individual needs and rights. As I said, an educated parent is the best advocate. So you really want to try to educate yourself. I know that there's a lot of information available and not all of it is helpful and not all of it is accurate. So we'll talk a little bit more later about how do you get access to accurate information. And just a tip to keep in mind, whenever you are online researching, it's good to look for websites that are government websites or in federal, state level websites, disability rights groups, things that are professional, and try to stay away from blogs or parent information. Not to discount that, but every child is unique, every parent's experience is different, and you may not be getting the full picture of information. Also, effective advocacy empowers the students and the parents. So hopefully with all this information, you'll feel very empowered moving forward working with your team. So one thing that's very helpful for families is creating an organizational system. It can be extremely overwhelming to receive all of this paperwork. And how do you keep track of things? So I wrote some examples of how families have really done a good job of keeping track, either a digital record, a paper file where things are received digitally, but they print it out and make sure they maintain it in at least one location in its entirety. Some keep both. Some families choose and say they'll keep certain things like emails electronically, but they may keep IEPs and evaluations in a hard copy separately. Some families feel concerned that they don't have the complete record for their child. And there is something called FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which entitles you to receive a full copy of your child's full education record. So at any point in your child's education career, you always have a right to get that full file if you need it. And you can make a request right to your district, to your intermediate unit, anyone that's providing the services to your child. So what do you need in your file? Many parents also tell me everything feels like alphabet soup. There's lots of acronyms and they don't always understand what are the important documents and what are not the important documents. I have to say, as an advocate myself, when families have dropped off files to me, I have received things like giant Tupperware bins where I've sorted through, and there's Christmas cards with glitter falling off that students have made in class, which is very adorable and I love to see, but definitely not something that needed to be maintained in your child's file unless it was representative sample of a handwriting issue, fine motor issue that they wanted to keep record of. So parents often either keep very little because it's overwhelming or way too much information, and then they are not able to access the things that they need. So here's just a list of some of the things I have found are very helpful to keep at hand, including medical records and information from experts. Anytime someone writes a letter, you always want to make sure you keep evaluations and your IEPs or plans that the school gives you. Email communication is a little bit different. I don't think you have to maintain a full record of all email communication that has occurred, although some families do. I more say if there's anything remarkable or something about a certain issue that parents like to keep track of, there's ways to create folders, even in your email servers, to just file that. It's good to always have that to be able to refer back to. And then progress reports and report cards are helpful as well. So when I talk about building your team, I listed some medical professionals, educational professionals, and other professionals. Very often people think of their child's team as the IEP team only, whoever the district provides to you. But parents are allowed to invite members of the team to join. So figure out who those people are on your end. and who you feel, one, knows your child best, and two, who you feel comfortable having at a meeting to make recommendations or to get the team thinking creatively about possibilities for programming. So that may be some medical professionals who are willing to attend, certainly educational professionals, that the ones under this list hopefully would already be included in your team, but you may have outside providers that your child sees separately. You can request that they come to meetings, and if they're willing then and participate, they become an equal member of the team at that meeting. And I always add other professionals. I think when I'm thinking of student focused programming, sometimes the person that knows your child the best is not always a well credentialed doctorate level professional. Sometimes it's just who spends a lot of time with your child and may know something about that child that is helpful for the team. Don't discount this information and feel free to bring people to the team that adds value and can help the other professionals understand your child better. So preparing for a meeting, there's a lot on the slide, so I'll try to talk through some. Um, as we just discussed, decide who's going to the meeting and let the district know ahead of time. Definitely better to not have surprises. Sometimes I have parents say to me, I don't want to let them know so and so is coming to this meeting. I'm just going to bring them. I do feel that that's not always conducive of a collaborative process. And you definitely don't want to put people on the defensive in the hopes of having a cooperative meeting. And I recognize that IEP meetings can be, or 504 meetings can feel very overwhelming and unbalanced. But I think that doing a few of these strategies ahead of time can help restore that balance for you a little bit. So you might want to also take someone who just can help listen and take notes. When they're talking about your child and there's an emotional impact to that, I do think sometimes parents struggle if they say something that doesn't quite sit with you or you need time to process and the team is just moving ahead and you didn't ask them or don't feel comfortable to go back to it or to ask them to stop, it is nice to have another set of ears or somebody to take notes for you. Parents ask me sometimes also about recording meetings. You do have the ability to do that, but in Pennsylvania, I know mostly all of the districts will also maintain a recorded record. This is definitely something you should ask ahead of time. They almost always insist that it would never be utilized in any dispute resolution or due process. It's merely for parents' education for themselves so they could re-listen to something that happened at the meeting. And in those cases, most districts will allow that, but definitely discuss those things ahead of time. So you should get an invitation. You can ask for a draft copy ahead of time. I like that because parents have the time and opportunity to read through, and they're not reading through something at the same time they're trying to listen to the team. You can make a list of your concerns ahead of time. Very often, I tell school teams that we will provide a list of parental concerns to be included into the IEP post meeting for a couple of reasons. One, sometimes concerns come up during the discussion. And two, the concerns are written into the IEP as you write them. And it's really the place in the IEP where the parents get to put in everything they want, how they want it to appear. So I want parents to take time to do that and not have it be written up by the district during the meeting because they may miss something. So usually we follow up with an email the day or two after as we collect those concerns and document them into the IEP. It's very important to document everything in writing, as I always say, with phone calls or discussions at the school. If it's not in writing, assumed it never happened. So just like that, parental concerns in writing in the IEP. So you want to review the goals and SDI, the progress reports, report cards, catch up with any out-of-district professionals, see if they have concerns, gather any information you want to bring to the meeting, and educate yourself, and don't be afraid to educate your team. If you read a certain article, a book, went to a lecture, have certain information, don't be afraid to share that information with the team, especially if you think it would benefit your child. So when you are meeting with the team, it's helpful to ask for a copy of the sign-in sheet. This is something that you can keep in your file and keep record of. Very often on the IEP programs, it will auto-populate who's in attendance with blank lines for people to sign in. Just having that does not always show you who was at your meeting. So if you get a copy of the sign-in sheet, it would have a list of everyone in attendance, and underneath the sign-ins of, what's already auto-populated, anyone who attended that was not already on the list. So sometimes it's hard to remember when you go back who was actually in attendance. So that can be helpful. So this piece about certain people in the meeting, staying in the meeting or dismissing them from the meeting. Very often people will come into the meeting if they have to, teachers, if they have to go back to class. If you feel there are certain professionals whom you would like to be there for the entirety, please let your team know ahead of time, and they can be thoughtful about that when they're scheduling the meeting. Sometimes the child will attend. That typically happens after age 14, which is the age of transition in Pennsylvania. The team will invite the child. There are certain meetings where I feel it is not appropriate to have the child attend, or there are certainly times when I do feel it's appropriate. That is a parental decision, I believe, more than a full team decision. You are looking out for the best interest of your child in that decision. And there may be times where it's appropriate for your child to attend a portion of the meeting. I don't like children to attend when the district and the parents are in disagreement, or when something specifically sensitive is being discussed about the child. I'm well aware that these are deficit-based documents for the most part, and I'm always really cautious about the emotionality of the child in these cases. You can set an agenda for the meeting. Sometimes case managers will do that. I think it's helpful to keep everybody on task. Again, I talk about the note taking. You can even share notes with the team and send them and say, do we feel this is an accurate reflection of our meeting? Don't be afraid to ask questions. Remember that the team is there for you and your child. They are meant to be your experts. So please never be afraid to ask any and all questions. Ask them to slow down, repeat things, go back to things anytime. They're there for you, and it should feel that way. Don't worry if you don't get a definitive answer to a question or concern at the table. Sometimes the dynamics of a meeting are difficult, and certain things cannot be fully discussed, or people need to get back to you. There can be a lot of conversations that occur behind the scenes, either in email or smaller follow-up meetings to discuss certain issues can be appropriate. So never feel pressured. And if your meeting is running long and you feel rushed through, you can always ask to set another time to complete the meeting. Don't ever let them feel like they're rushing you through. If you need more data or information to make a decision, don't be afraid to ask for that. Sometimes the team will recommend something and parents feel pressured to make a decision. You do not have to make a decision ever at the table. That's something you can say I need some time to think about that. And if there's anything you need to help make your decision, don't feel bad about asking for that information. So after the meeting, it's really helpful to review your notes. And if you brought someone, it's kind of helpful to have a discussion back and forth to see how they saw things, how you saw things, any issues that came up. I find even in my meetings, follow-up conversations with parents and their perspective on it versus my perspective on it can be very helpful in vetting out any ongoing concerns or further things that need to be addressed. You can make lists of follow-up tasks to share with the team of keeping everyone on target for issues that were discussed and how we're going to provide outcomes and closure or clarity on those issues. And as I mentioned before, you can share emails with the case manager or the entire team following up on those points. And you can follow up with your experts or treating professionals. Very often I advise parents, take that IEP to the audiologist, to your doctor, to the speech pathologist, to the educational audiologist and say, what do you think about these things? I have concerns about a few of them. Can we discuss? And you can provide their input to the team, or you can ask them to attend a follow-up meeting if you need to have further discussion. So some other helpful tips. So make sure you note all your notes and documents are dated. I know this sounds simplistic, but very often parents will just write the month or the year or not date things at all. And it's very easy to lose track. Throughout your child's education, it is an overwhelming amount of paperwork that you receive and notes and documents. So I have found keeping things in chronological order is very helpful. Like some families do a separate bin or a separate folder or file for each school year. That can be very helpful, but honestly, any system that works for you. And some families choose to keep like documents together, all IEPs in one place, all evaluations in one place chronologically, and that can be helpful too, whichever way, so that if you need to retrieve something, you're able to get it. Do not mark up original documents. Make a copy or use sticky notes. I think this is very helpful because very often parents will get an IEP or an evaluation. They will highlight it, write on it, and then when they need to share it with someone, all of their notes are on it, and they may not want to share their notes. So it's good to keep a clean copy and either use sticky notes or make a clean copy and then mark up your own personal copy. You may not feel comfortable sharing that marked up copy. I also said it's helpful to have a separate binder or system for notes and resources. Anything you go to, you can get so much great information and you don't want to lose track of that either. And sometimes if you just put it in the file with everything else, it's easy to lose track. Sometimes having a separate folder or bin for all of the books, resources, lectures is really helpful. And parents will always share that with other families, which is great too. Another way that a lot of my families keep track of things is they'll send me emails, just stream of consciousness, and I'm able to maintain that. But if you're not working with an advocate, I suggest writing yourself an email because it will be time stamped. So even if some families keep a journal and they'll date it, but just your thoughts. If you have an immediate concern, write yourself a quick email because then you remember exactly the time and day and what was going on when you go back into that email and what was happening. And then keep all email communication with the school as part of the record as much as you can. Like I said, you don't have to keep everything if that's difficult to do. Sometimes you might keep it pertaining to a certain issue like ESY, if that is a struggle, you know, qualifying for services or getting support, and you want to maintain those emails as part of the record to show what occurred and how poorly things went or your concerns with that specifically. But some families do keep all of their email communication. Um, and if you have a phone call with anyone from the team, follow up with a quick summary email. As I mentioned before, if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. So parents get stuck on phone calls sometimes. You do not have to make it adversarial. You very easily could say, as per our discussion today, I just wanted to make sure I understood the following points and just clarify and say, like, please let me know if I misunderstood anything. And thank you. And I appreciate your time. That way, it documents the conversation, but at the same time, you're giving them the opportunity to clarify if there was anything that you misunderstood. And I talk about creating your own information sheets. So these could be things where you just keep a real quick sheet that gives you like basic information about your child from year to year or the people in their lives and things that are occurring, like providers that are working with your child, experts that you're utilizing, school staff. So if you keep a list of the person, their contact information, email, phone number, you'd be surprised how useful that becomes. Their role and title, and it's just really helpful to have that. Some students have rotating teams and so many providers that work year to year that it can get really difficult to keep track. And families of students who are older know that going back throughout their educational career, that's something that was always hard to keep track of. New parents should know that could, there's the medical teams, the educational teams, everyone. So having things like that really streamline for parents and make it really helpful. Preparation sheets for your meeting. You can also make information sheets about your child to give to people who are new for your child. So that could be a list of here's my child, here's their interest, here's if they have any allergies or if they have any very specific strategies or accommodations that they would need to be addressed immediately. You can say, my child is deaf. They need to, will read your lips. So make sure you're speaking right to them, and or any of the other pieces. A one pager about your child, I think, is a really great thing. Most teachers and related service providers keep those one pagers right on top of the child's file. And I have seen in meetings where they'll add their own little notes, like really likes trains or really likes. And so I think that's a really nice thing to provide sometimes. Um, Notes from the meeting, so you can even make your own little template to bring to your meetings and fill out, the same every time. Like, what were my concerns? Were there any changes in the program? New people being added, things that they want to take away, progress that is being made, or just anything that you want to address, you can add to that sheet that you want to fill out. Sometimes it makes it easier and to organize than just bringing a notepad. And keep a chronology. This is extremely helpful, especially if there's any disputes along the way. If you go to work with an advocate or an attorney, sometimes you pay a cost to have people help do a chronology for your child of timelines of evaluations, IEPs, meetings, concerns, major life events. Sometimes keeping the chronology as you go can be extremely helpful, even if you don't ever work with an attorney or an advocate. But it's helpful to have just for you as well, like another cheat sheet to refer back to. And if you're doing it as you go, can be really helpful. These are a list of some of the resources that are available and good places to go to get some information. As well as, like I said, please feel free to reach out to myself or Jenny and Tawny. And I'm actually going to ask them to join me now, and we can talk a little bit about we can have a little discussion about some of the problems that parents face in advocating for their child. Welcome. Thank you for joining.
Hi.
Okay, okay, I'm stopping sharing my screen. So I wanted to ask Jenny and Tawny, thank you for joining me today. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was, where have you seen parents struggle while trying to be advocates for their child in your experiences?
I will say that I think it's difficult for parents when there's a disagreement about their child, or they feel like someone on the team isn't considering what's in their child's best interest or what is truly what their child needs. It becomes a very emotional thing for parents, understandably, and can make the advocacy piece more difficult than it would be if they were advocating for their neighbor's child, for example, or their, you know, um, somebody, in a professional capacity. Hard to think clearly when it's your own child and you're feeling upset or sad or, about the situation. So I think that can be a difficult piece for parents, and I think that some of the pointers you gave, Maria, about having somebody that can help you take notes at a meeting, potentially, or um, all of the strategies that, leaving a meeting and jotting down questions you have or things you need to follow up on or what's on your mind, or sort of those stream of conscious thoughts, or sending yourself a quick email to remind yourself of things you want to do, all helps, because that emotional piece can get them, they can become so upset about that then they can easily lose focus on the objectives they have and what they want to accomplish to make things better for their kid.
Yes, definitely. I also find that very often when advocating during an IEP meeting, families and schools may have already had some contention historically. It's been going on for a while now, and that can also make things harder doing advocacy, trying to find some middle ground. So I definitely encourage using an advocate from the beginning. Someone who knows the child, they can be brought to the meeting. They themselves are there and they can keep emotions out of it and just looked at the situation objectively and see what the school is saying they can or can't do, what the family wants, and they can see if something could be used, let's say on a trial basis, and sort of help to mediate that situation. I also noticed that activity prior to the meeting will really help. You don't have to be an expert in the law or the process. What's important is that you know your child. Then you're able to use, there's a great app, there's actually a free app from the Laurent Clerc Center. Hands and Voices, the American Society for Deaf Children, and the NAD have helped create this app. It's a parent advocacy app. You can download that either for Android or for an iPhone. And that will give you a checklist of what you can do prior to a meeting, what you can do during a meeting, and then once the meeting has completed. There are videos, there are resources, there are lots of information that are provided to you right there. And again, it's a free app. It's very easy to read. It also has, finding information can be very overwhelming. So this app is a really great tool to use. I definitely agree having someone come to the meeting with you to help support the family so you don't feel so alone during an IEP meeting, because often you're one person sitting at a table full of people, and it's nice to sort of make it feel balanced out by having someone on your side, so to speak.
I completely agree with you. I know parents say to me a lot, they're walking into a meeting, sometimes with 12 or more professionals sitting across from them, and they get very nervous and they're afraid to say stop or I don't understand or slow down. I try to frame parents, and I did a little bit in my PowerPoint by saying to them, they're there for you and your child. Like, don't be worried about the imbalance. You go in with the mindset of you are my team and my child's team, my experts. I need to know and learn from you how you're going to help my child. And I'm going to teach you about my child and setting that up as the expectation or the dynamic. But I know that a lot of the pieces that where conflicts arise are not just the expectations, but where the intersection of, the district has to provide what the child needs and what is appropriate. And parents are always looking for what's best and in the best interest of their child. So sometimes just the way people are phrasing things can create an unnecessary conflict. And I always try to help teams kind of understand, of course, parents are going to phrase things as this is what's best for my child, but you need, as a school team, to filter that into a way of saying, this is what this child needs and what the parents feel is appropriate. And parents, likewise, get very upset when a district might say, well, that might be what's best for the child, but we don't have to provide what's best. We have to provide what's appropriate or what the child needs. And again, it's a different way of looking at things. But then I help parents understand the team sees that as this child does not need this. So then we need to find a way to show that this is what they need. And in a lot of work I do with clinicians, helping them understand when they write letters, if they feel the child needs something, say needs. Don't say the child may benefit from, which is just a term of art and a way clinicians, unintentionally phrase things sometimes. So I try to get them to be more aware of how the words they're using really matter. And Tawny, that app sounds amazing. And maybe we could share that with Lynette and we can put it in for parent resources. So speaking of information out there and that app, I know there's a lot of information out there. I think we all put some resources or contact in our PowerPoints. And I did say to parents, try to err on the side of going to .govs or specific disability websites and organizations or universities and things like that, and try to stay away from parent blogs or just things that might be very specific to certain families' experiences or maybe not, or specific to certain areas or regions or districts. How have you guys found any ways other than that for parents to get accurate information?
No, I would agree with your advice, Maria. I think it's important to look at the source of where the information is coming from, because not everything is equally reliable or equally persuasive. And the last thing you want to do is go into a meeting and be incorrect about something that you are saying that you got from the internet, that isn't really reliable. But I think there are ways to fact check yourself and check your information wherever you're finding it by talking to people who are well versed in this area, calling an advocate, calling the Education Law Center, Disability Rights Pennsylvania, or any of the advocates out there that know special education law, and sort of trying to get some advice before your meeting, checking the information you got. But in terms of actually looking at the sources, just be aware of where the information is coming from. And I agree, looking at .gov websites in Pennsylvania, anything that is through PDE's website, Pennsylvania Department of Education's website, through publication that they've put out or that Patan has put out, the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network. I know in Tani's presentation, she provided the link to that website, which has a ton of really valuable resources. Something that's coming from an expert that worked with your child or a service provider, that's all going to be really reliable. Sticking away from things that comes from somebody you don't know or somebody that may not have actual real knowledge.
Yes, I agree with everything both of you have commented on. I mean, the internet is great. It provides so much information and it has a font of information, but sometimes it's hard to know exactly where to go. There's a lot to sort through. So a general guideline is to look for, again, links that end in .gov, et cetera. And also keep an eye on nationwide organizations that are providing services for deaf and hard of hearing children. Often they will have more information that is specifically geared to deaf and hard of hearing children, and also deaf and hard of hearing children who have additional disabilities. There may be other websites about IEP rights for people who have children with disabilities, et cetera. You may feel that it applies, but I would say check in things with places like the Laurent Clair Center, the National Association of the Deaf, Gallaudet University, Rochester Institute of Technology, the Hands and Voices website, the American Society for Deaf Children, BL2, the PSD Family Resource Center. There are a whole host of links for you where you can find some really great information and some great websites to navigate. And again, these are nationally based websites. It's also important to know that national conferences that are held, for example, Hands and Voices has a national conference, the American Society for Deaf Children has a national conference. Those are also great places to meet other folks who can share information and tips with you, provide support. You can develop networks there. Also, the National Association for Deaf Education provides a conference every year, so you can check that out and learn about the most up-to-date information on educating deaf children. So there's a lot of great information there. Conferences, again, are a great resource and ways to network. You could go to webinars, you can network locally. You don't always have to do everything on the computer or on your phone. Sometimes that might feel overwhelming, confusing. So sometimes it's really nice to get that in-person discussion with folks and build those relationships.
Great, thank you. I think that's so helpful for families. And I know families will say to me a lot that they don't even know what's possible. And if their team isn't telling them what's possible for their child and what they may have access to or might have access to, I know this comes up where parents are sharing a lot more information with each other and may find out, oh, my child has an audiologist as a member of the IEP team. It's an education audiologist. They have direct service from them, not just consult. They're in the building. They do observations. They come to all the meetings. Whereas some families may say, they didn't even tell me that I could have an education audiologist as part of my team. And so parents say, like, how do we know what's possible if no one's telling us? And that may not be always something captured at conferences or may be specific to the child's needs. So I don't know if you've had in any of your experience, whether you think parents reaching out to their treating professionals, or if there are good resources, or if you think them working with other families that share similar background to their child, or ways that parents can find out, like what should they be asking for that might be appropriate.
I think those are great suggestions that you threw out, Maria, of trying to be connected with resource groups and other families that may have gone through something similar and may know information that they can share. And I keep saying experts just as a general term, but treatment providers, doctors, therapists, they should have good suggestions. And if there's a specific problem or something that you're specifically worried about and your school is really not offering you a helpful advice or a helpful solution, talk about it with others and see if anybody else, you never know when you're going to find somebody that has a great suggestion for you that you can then take to your school, and it is something you can ask for once you're informed about it. So yeah, I certainly think surrounding yourself with those kinds of resources outside of is really valuable and important.
Yes, and actually, you could compare that with any child, really. Perhaps there's a neighbor child or there are other kids. You could look at what they're learning, what they're involved with. Let's say if one child isn't expressing as much vocabulary as another or as a sibling, you could also check in about that, ask for an evaluation, see how your child's progressing, see if more supports are needed or if they're on target, or maybe they'll need supports later. You could ask a physician, you could ask a school professional. Just don't settle for less. Keep looking out for your child, look for these resources, stay motivated, stay engaged. And if maybe your child loves science but hates reading, maybe your child can't get enough of books but hates math, that's fine, that's great, that's typical for any child. Again, just check in and see where their interests lie and try to provide them with more activities, or if there's an area in which they're struggling, see what supports can be given, whether it be a tutor or a special camp or any other opportunity for the child to get rehabilitative services within the school. It's important to have high expectations because by having them, it would be the same expectations as would be placed on a child who can hear. And that's what we want. We want our children to do well in school and have high expectations for them so that they can be engaged in organizations, athletics. You want to dream big for your child. And you want to stay with it. Even though they may have other disabilities or they are just deaf, there may be reasons for more supports, but you certainly don't want to lower your expectations on your child. It's okay. Meet them where they're at, see what's available for them, and then, for example, and play into their strengths. Deaf children are amazing. They can do so many things. The sky's the limit. So you really want to take advantage of everything that's available to you. I've met a lot of people myself who are deaf who have become physicians, rocket scientists, they own their own businesses, they're in a variety of fields and they're very successful, and your child can do the same.
Thank you, Tanya. I completely agree with you. And I think that I try to talk to parents about operating from a place of, if all things were possible, how would you solve this problem, or what would you be asking for? And if you assume that all things are possible, ask about it, or like you said, camps or other activities, even if you think it doesn't fall within the realm of something a school has a responsibility for, you should still talk about it, ask about it, and gut check yourself. If you ask for something or you're talking about something and the team says it's not possible, then, if you don't feel like that's right, because there is a difference between we can't do something and we won't do something. And I think that's another area where families get tripped up in the language. Like if a district says we can't do that, sometimes it's that they can do it, they just won't do it because they don't feel it's needed. But that is very different than they can't like legally provide that. And if it's that they won't because they don't feel it's needed, then it may be that the parents can gather information or data that shows that it is needed and that it can be done. And so I think that's a little bit different. I have one more question, and it's really just about, if you're experts and you see things very differently than your school team. I know Jenny talked a lot about the dispute resolution process already, so I don't feel like we need to go into that specifically. But if we have time for just one more quick question about just in your experience where you have seen people see things differently, and how do you sort of problem solve through that? If there's any last minute advice you have for parents, I know we're going to be speaking with them directly. So during our session. So if we want to hold off and wait till we speak with them about their specific issues, that's fine. But just any information about resolving those conflicts amicably, any tips would be helpful.
I think sharing that kind of information in as non-confrontational a way as possible and highlighting what you feel is supporting your position or what the district might be misunderstanding or just not grasping. There's a way, I mean, these are people that are busy, that are responsible for a lot of kids, that are tired, and they may not be hearing you or paying attention to what you're saying. And so it may be that if they would better understand or listen to what you're saying, maybe they would agree with you that, you know, this expert is clearly saying my kid needs this, and I don't understand why we're not able to, you know, agree on that. You know, highlighting the information for them, pulling it from the document and outlining it, putting it in a letter, something like that. If just sharing the document with the information wasn't enough, maybe trying to make their job a little easier and just saying, I really want you to understand where I'm coming from. You know, we have this really helpful person that has an opinion that we agree with, and we would like the district to really consider this, you know. But yeah, other than that, if that can't bridge the gap, then I think some of the dispute resolution procedures that I talked about may be helpful in those situations.
And one thing I would like to add is just to keep in mind that don't think that the IEP meeting is the only time that you can contribute. You can ask for an appointment to speak with a teacher or to a service provider and meet with them individually anytime. You can bring an apple, you can bring cookies, you can have a conversation with them. Maybe after school, bring some coffee, sit and have a discussion, or drink water together. And again, just have a conversation. Thank them for everything that they do. And just say, you know, this is what I'm seeing. Is this something you're seeing as well? Keep it informal. Because again, the people on the IEP team are human. All of us are human. We all have things that, you know, we're thinking about, whether we're worried about our boss watching us, we're worried about staying in our role, whether it's about how many kids we have to teach. There are a lot of things going on for everyone. So we want to figure out each other's values and have a conversation and say, okay, well, if this is something that you find valuable, maybe this is what we can bring into the meeting. And that's where, you know, teachers often, for example, are very invested in developing lesson plans and curriculum. And they have a lot going on in the classroom. But sometimes you could say, well, the curriculum doesn't seem to be working for my child. So I'm wondering, you know, it works for other students. Clearly, you're doing an amazing job. So what are some things that we can do to provide additional supports for my child, whether it be an aid? And then maybe the teacher will feel that's a bonus as well, because then they'll have some additional help for all of their responsibilities. So sometimes it's like you can work together individually to come up with solutions. And sometimes people are put into positions that they're not trained for and they feel unprepared. So sometimes when you engage in conversations with them, you can provide them with ideas about different workshops and trainings that maybe they didn't think of. Sometimes they think it might be up to the school district, but again, you wanted to build up a rapport relationship with people on the team because it's for your child's best interests, and that will also help. And then during the IEP meeting, you'll feel more comfortable because you've already had some discussions with these people on a personal level, and that will help make you feel more at ease when you engage with them during the formal meeting.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenny and Tawny, for all of your input. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all the parents for joining today. And we look forward to having our feedback sessions with you guys shortly. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Maria.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Maria.